It is the Southern River Band, the boys from Thornley, getting us rolling into a Thursday edition of the Shelter FootyCast, live from the BackChat Studios. Mark Redding's in the host chair because Will Schofield's gone interstate, and the Sandover medal favourite is Hamish Brayshaw as he gets prepared for a final series with East Perth. Hammer, hello.
Skeet, how are you? Very good.
Going really well. Of course, socials at Shelter FootyCast, FootyCast at shelterbrewing.com.au, YouTube BackChat Shelter FootyCast. The playlist is there. We're going to go through our Bottle Mart Roughie of the Week, which is going to be tough because there's no footy on the AFL this week. But there's AFLW, there's
Waffle, there's lots
NRL,
of things.
you name it. And, of course, you can start your footy weekend at Bottle Mart. Grab your shelters where Bottle Mart has you covered. And don't forget, September 22, it's at Shelter. It's Dice playing very, very accomplished. I'm not sure if you heard some of their music. Schoeys played it to me. They are outstanding. In fact, there were some suggestions that they could be the support act to Coldplay, whether they wanted to go down that path.
Yeah,
obviously,
like the Southern River boys have said no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. They've got bigger fish to fry.
What a snub. Anyway, Dice are at Shelter, September 22. Get your tickets now at oztix.com.au. So plenty to look forward to with them playing. That's a long weekend. You're hoping not to be available.
I won't be available. Hopefully rolling into the grand final 2 days later.
Righto, let's jump into our big moments of the weekend and the week. I don't think there's any bigger than what happened at your footy club, the West Coast Eagles, Adam Simpson.
Yep.
Well, he's contracted until the end of 2025.
Yes.
But the board has had a sit down, had a chat, and unanimously have said he's the man for the job. For me, it's a very courageous decision given the results that have happened over the past couple of years.
Certainly.
What's it done to the vibe at the West Coast Eagles?
It's given a little bit of finality, I think, and a bit of a surety to everyone. With exit interviews and the end of the season wrap-up sort of happening alongside this debate as to whether or not he'll be there or won't be there. A decision for him to stay, I think, has just let everyone sort of rest a little bit easier, and now boys are on off-season. Guys can sort of set themselves forward to next year. The coaches can sort of start planning what things are going to look like because we know who the coach is going to be. Obviously, there'll be some changes underneath that, and it has to be the way, but I think the leader of the footy club, you've got Schoeys gone, so there'll be a new captain. To have the coach stay is giving a little bit of assurity to the group, I think.
That being said, there seemed to be a groundswell of belief amongst maybe the media, footy fans, that Adam Simpson was on borrowed time. How much do you think the result against, say, the Bulldogs, the better performance against North Melbourne and Essendon, how much did that help his cause? Because at the end of the day, it's a results-based business.
Yeah, certainly. I think the earlier part of the season was somewhat excused given the fact that older players were injured and younger guys were sort of getting it, finding their feet. And then in the back half of that year, it became, they became no longer excuses. Players were playing, younger players had experience. And I think when those excuses or when those reasons were starting to wear thin, they started to perform, which obviously you get, you get a bit of belief off the back of that. But the games against Essendon where they nearly won, the Bulldogs game, the North game, there were competitive. Even the St Kilda game I look back on, and they were right in and amongst that. So there were games in the back half of this year where, although they lost, they were able to show enough promise that it wasn't all doom and gloom around the place, albeit that you throw in the Fremantle loss and those sort of things throughout there. But I feel like there was enough. You could see enough out there that it wasn't all doom and gloom, and there's some real opportunities. Tim Kelly was flying. Oscar Allen finished 5th in the Coleman in a team that was, bottom of the ladder, and then you get guys. They had 3 rising star noms go over to Melbourne last night for the awards. So Cully, Jinby, and Hewitt, they're going to be really good players. You look across. Even like guys like Noah Long are flying along, and Jamie Cripps came back and played good footy. Liam Duggan really stood up this year. So there's been bits and pieces that you can look at and latch onto and say there's been enough. But I think the back end of the year, the results weren't as bad, with the exception of that Freo game. Okay,
we're going to roll through in fact, the 18 clubs, like a school teacher. We're going to get your decision, whether they get an A plus, B,
sure.
C, D, and of course down to F, including our WA clubs very shortly. But let's go back to the start of the season.
Yep.
And we all make some big statements. We all make some predictions that don't come off. I'll just run through some of Schoeys.
Yep.
Geelong to go back-to-back.
He said that, yeah.
Fremantle.
Top 4, I think he said.
Top 4 comfortably. West Coast to play finals. If they didn't, he'd do a nude run around Optus Stadium. So there's just a couple of the silly things that Schoeys said.
Yep.
let's go back, and then I think from what I've heard, yours is a bit closer to the mark. This is Hammer, his pre-season and the start of the season predictions.
I remember one vividly, but we'll get there.
The 3 predictions for the year in its totality. Premiers?
Yep, Melbourne.
Brownlow medalist?
Christian Petrarca. I think injury-free. He'll be unstoppable this year.
And the wooden spoon?
Hawthorn.
Hawthorn's your big no-no.
Hawthorn was
guess
a big
what?
no-no.
But having said that, I think most people at the start of the year thought, and after 2 rounds, the people saying they wouldn't win a game for the year.
Yeah, that's true. Hawthorn was a big... They've turned it around on me. I think Christian Petrarca will go close but won't win it. The other one that I remember saying that got whacked down in here and really, really hounded almost was I said the Giants would make the finals.
Did you really?
I said GWS will make the finals, and I feel like I was almost laughed out of the room by you.
You probably were
Yeah.
at the stage, because I reckon I had them bottom 4.
Same. I think in my original letter I might have had them 14th, and then you said give me an outlandish press statement. I said, they'll make finals.
Isn't it funny here? Remember the good things, but you forgot some of the
forget
shit you said.
all the shit stuff. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, anyway, we're about to jump into that, but off the back of that, they are our big moments of the week. This is the Shelter Footy Carts with Hammer and Skeet. Okay, last night a lot of awards because we've got no footy to really get our teeth into. The AFL Rising Star, the All-Australian Awards, the Coaches Association Best Young Player. Let's go through them. First of all, the Rising Star, Harry Sheasel, fairly predictable.
Yeah, that was signed, sealed and delivered. He had the most disposals ever by a debutant in his first year. I think he starred from the get-go. The first game against North Melbourne, he dropped. He fumbled his first possession. I remember watching it and thinking, geez, he's a little bit nervous here. And then he went out and had 30-odd. He's just looked like a star from the get-go. So he'll be a very good player for a long time. But, that was no question.
He finished with 54 votes. Will Ashcroft, who, of course, has done his knee and didn't play the back half of the year, 39 votes in second. Mitch Owens, 33 votes. That's a really good performance from him, given he's come out of nowhere. And Jai Amos from the Dockers in 4th spot with 28 votes. Just quickly on Sheasel, we saw with Hayden Young go from a half-back to inside the midfield. Is Sheasel someone who's going to develop into that type of player?
I would say so eventually. At the moment, he's probably a little bit slight and not strong enough to be in there, and reads the ball too well to be taken off that half-back flank. But I think once they get going and you get guys like him and Wardlaw and Davies-Uniacke through there, then he'll be fine. But at the moment, I think he'll stay at half-back.
Okay, AFL Coaches Association Best Young Player, Nick Dacos, not too many to dispute that. And the Coaches Association MVP, Zach Butters.
Yeah.
Which is a really, I think in terms of players, that's highly rated.
Yeah, that's right up there as well. I mean, the awards last night have 2 real big ones, obviously, the PA and the Coaches Association Award, along with the All-Australian. But the players one's interesting because... Andrew won it last year, but it's very much you feel the respect of your peers and you get that sort of adulation from your own peers. But I think the coaches one stands a little bit different because they vote on it after the game. Every coach, both head coaches vote every game for their best player, and to win that, they know more about football than anyone in the game.
And the role that you play as opposed to the touches you get.
Yeah, exactly. They're not looking. It's not necessarily an umpire award. If Harris Andrews dominates a full forward, he'll get votes. So it's very much
or fullback.
It's very much who gets the best. Who plays the best role and who plays the most dominant game, and you take that out over a season, and to win that award, I feel like that one carries a big weight.
Does it also have a little bit of give us a guide towards the Brownlow? Butters with 109 votes, Marcus Bontempelli 102, Nick Dacos 99. So, albeit you could flip those 3 around in the Brownlow, but it might give us a bit of a guide or not?
Yeah, it does give you a reasonable guide, and to be honest, so does the PA one. But I think the difference there is that every now and again you get a game with an umpire that might see something a little bit differently. The coaches get a different view of it. They're obviously watching. They're watching the entire game. They can see it for all it's worth. Whereas the umps are a lot more around the footy. And then you'll get one like last year when Palpepper had 14 touches and a goal and was the best player on the ground in the umpire's eyes, and that sort of stuff happens. But this is a pretty good rough guide.
The AFL Players Association Best Captain, Marcus Bontempelli.
Yep.
Most Courageous, Zach Butters. That's the players. And also Marcus Bontempelli wins the MVP from Nick Dacos, Zach Butters, Toby Green, Christian Petrarca. So the main awards there. Off the back of that, the All-Australian side was named. And let's before we just go through that, just so people know who votes on these awards, including the All-Australian. Gillon McLaughlin's a chairperson, Kevin Bartlett. We've got Bolton from Jude Bolton from Sydney, Nathan Buckley, Kane Corns, Andrew Dillon, Glenn Jakovich, Laura Kane, Cameron Ling, Matthew Pavlich. So there's a lot of footy heads there.
Yep.
The All-Australian side to be captained by Toby Green.
Yep, outstanding.
One West Australian-based player, it's Caleb Sarong, who's on the bench. What did you make of it? And anyone who you think was stiff to miss out, I mean, they don't play anyone, so it's hard to get too emotional about it.
Yeah, it is. I think Caleb Strong was excellent, and I'm glad to see him get the reward. I think Tim Taranto was pretty stiff. I think he had a fantastic year. To be honest, though, I look across there, and you can't. The thing about the Australian team is there's just so many good players that are there. You can't really debate too hard anyone, I don't think.
Dusty, his name's brought up in the last couple of weeks as a player that the standard is so high that he gets maybe harshly judged. Is that a fair shout, or is he? I mean, is he a forward now or a mid?
I think he's still a forward. I think in the same way Petrarca is now a forward, but that can dominate in the midfield. I think he's still a handful of best players in the comp, Dusty.
Yeah.
So I got no issues with him. Just trying to think about who else could have been in there.
Taranto was
mine. That was a bit stiff. No, I'm happy with Tim English in the ruck. I think that was perfect. That was really good. I'm happy that they picked wingers on the wing. That was a change that hasn't happened in God knows how long. Goulden and Dacos on the wing I like that a lot.
I guess you've got Charlie Curnow full forward, Taylor Walker centre half forward. Nick Larkey
on the
makes the bench, which I think a really good reward for him.
Yeah.
71 goals in a team that finishes 17th.
Absolutely. That's I've sung Oscar Allen's praises this year for kicking 50 odd in a West Coast team, but then on North Melbourne not that far behind, to go out and kick 71 goals is just a phenomenal effort, not far off the Coleman medal. He's going to be a star with the little service that he had this year to go out and do that. He's such a good one-on-one player. He leads at the ball really well, and he's a deadly kick on goal. So he's very, very good reward for effort. Courtesy
of Sir Swamp Thing, the fewest career games to collect 5 All-Australian selections. Tom Stewart, 148 games. I don't reckon he had he's talking about a player with a reputation. Did he have as good a year in 2023 as others? I'm not sure, but he's a gun. But again, to have 5, it's a mighty effort.
Yeah, it's an enormous effort. And again, he's one of the guys that you look at and think he had a better year last year. I don't know how many guys were better than him this year, but he did stand out every other week. But I think they're one of the ones you just look at and you just pencil in, there goes Tom Stewart, we'll just put him there. He had a fantastic year, so I'm not discrediting that, but it's I feel like he'd be one of the guys that the selectors, when they're really arguing over he's already there, so let's just lock him away.
Yeah. Awards night, it's just filling stuff, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I got the AFLW starting this weekend, but having said that, there's talk in the NRL about following our lead of having a break before the finals, because tonight it's Brisbane Broncos playing Melbourne. There are 21 players being rested because 2 reasons. Obviously the finals come out, but Melbourne are 4th and Brisbane are 1st. Brisbane don't want to play Melbourne first up, so they're resting players. Melbourne don't want to win because they want to play Brisbane. So the finals bye, although I'd rather have it before the grand final, the players appreciate the break or not?
Yeah, I think so. I think the only real negative that it can have is on the teams that win, that are the top 4 that win and win, gives them a little bit too much time off. But I think for the most part, the players appreciate it. It's a long season. You get to the end of the year and you feel good about having that week. So I don't know. I don't mind it. I like it.
Okay, that's some of the All-Australians, some of the awards that have been handed out over the course of the last 24 hours. You're listening to the Shelter FootyCast. It's Hammer and Skeet. As promised, in the absence of Schoeys, we're going to roll through Hammer's and my gradings at the end of the school year, so to speak, for some of the clubs. And, of course, others have got, we have to bear in mind these could change for 8 clubs over the next month or so. But let's start with our WA clubs, the teams and the better players and maybe what might transpire over the off-season. Beginning with, of course, West Coast, finished 18th. We know there's going to be changes with player exit meetings happening as we speak. Hammer, give us your summation.
Well, I mean, it's pretty hard to give them anything higher than sort of your lower grades.
It's an F.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's got to be an F.
I won't give them an F, and I'll tell you why. I'll give them what's one above an F, an E. I'll give them an E, and I'll tell you why I'll give them an E. I mean, obviously they finished 18th.
I never got an E. I got a lot of S, but not an E's. Seriously?
Yeah, I'm going to give him an E. Above an F. Reasons being, one, I'm employed there. The reasons being, I don't think that, yes, they finished 18th. They were predicted they weren't going to finish very well. That's fine for the most part. I think the way they've finished this year, I would have given him an F up until 6 weeks ago, but the way they've finished this year, I think, has ticked them up to an E. They've had 3 greats that retire, which give opportunities for young players. They've had 3, I said before, they've got 3 young rising stars. They've got a full forward who kicked 50 goals in the worst team in the comp. They've got a guy who, for the most part, I think a lot of football fans were saying they overpaid for and they gave up draft picks, this, that and the other. And he's produced a phenomenal year and he's been fantastic. Tim Kelly's been amazing. I think you've got that later to middle tier age bracket, Liam Duggan, Tom Cole, those guys started to come and play really good footy towards the end, and you've got the number 1 draft pick. So there's an E, not an F.
Yeah, well, I'm going with F.
Sure.
2 wins, and I'm only doing a little part-time work for the West Coast. So I can
3 wins.
3 wins, yeah. Still a wooden spoon, only the second time in the club's history. So,
I understand
if
that.
it's not an F, it's got to be the half-brother to an F, surely.
It's an E.
It's an E.
There you go.
Hopefully not too many of those dropped over the next couple of weeks around footy clubs. Let's jump into some of the comings and goings though. In brief, we know that the 3 retirees, but what about the possibility? Devon Robertson's been reportedly offered a 4-year deal, or certainly offered to come to the club. And there's word that Tyler Brockman wants out at Hawthorn. He's out of contract, requesting a trade home. The Eagles seem to be his likely destination. You're happy to put your name next to those 2 players if they come to the club? Would they be good additions?
I feel like they would be. I mean, Dev did a little bit of work in that AIS Academy. I think he did 2 weeks at the footy club, so he has been around the place, and obviously now with 50,000 plus Instagram followers post shirt rip, he'd be a really good addition. But
wow.
I think the thing I always think this about WA players returning home. Don't just say, just because he's from WA, he has to come back here. They've got to have some substance about them. They've got to be good players, and I think both of them are, which is good. So I'm not sure where that list management stuff sits, but if they can facilitate a deal and they can get them back, then you need good players around the place, and especially homegrown talent that's not going to want to do anything other than stay and play football. So I think that'd be 2 good additions.
Okay, a couple of players, young players coming about. Let's jump our attention to the Fremantle Dockers, who were touted by many to finish top 4 and beyond, and if you had them in the top 4, then you're not a lone soldier there, because most of us had them at least in the top 8. I want your marking on that one, and also the news breaking over the past 24 hours about Liam Henry, who wants to trade to a Melbourne club. Of course, he was picked 9, and off the back of that, what do you think Fremantle will be chasing, either in exchange or to replace a player of his value?
Yeah, it's interesting. They certainly haven't performed, Fremantle, this year. I'll give them... I reckon I'm going to give them a D.
So hang on, West Coast gets an E for where they finished last, and you're giving
Fremantle a D.
Okay.
I feel like Fremantle's expectations were, although they performed better than West Coast this year, their expectation was higher, so they've still fallen quite a bit. But I don't think the Darcy Jackson experiment worked overly well for the most part. There were games where it did, which were great. Same with the Grundy-Gawn situation, but I feel like that Darcy played his best footy on his own in the middle, and Jackson played his best footy when he was on his own. So that'll be something that they've got to figure out. I think Nat Fyfe not being there has hurt them. I think the loss of David Mundy has hurt them. When Hayden Young came into the midfield, they obviously found a bit of size and some go about them. But they just were too streaky this year. They had patches where they were flying. They won, I think, 4 in a row up to the bye, and then beat Melbourne at the MCG, and everyone was raving. And they were in the finals race, and then all of a sudden they just capitulated, and then they got going late, but too little too late for no avail. So, yeah, I think what was a very promising start to the year when they had all the potential, they've laid a bit of an egg. So a D for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give him a D as well. And off the back of that, I reckon the first 2 losses of the season, albeit St Kilda is playing finals, but to lose to North Melbourne here, you're 0-2, very hard to get back. On in front of the game after that. I thought their last 4 or 5 weeks, though, last month, I think they started to get back some of their identity in the way they play their footy. So I think it's a reasonable momentum heading forward. As for the Liam Henry situation, where you can always make something like this a positive for the club. What do you think that they need or will look for in exchange for losing him?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I think at the back end of last year, you wouldn't have been out of place to say he was a pick 9 that's not really doing much.
Absolutely.
And he has come out and lit the world up this year. He's
averaging 20 disposals.
Yeah, he's come out and he's an out-and-out winger and he's flying. So I think you've got a pick 9 value in him, which is good. So whether they ask for maybe a first rounder,
First
maybe
round he might struggle.
Maybe they try and find a trade where you get someone else in. I'm not sure. I think you could definitely get a second round pick for him. I don't know whether they'll do that or whether or not they'll try and get a player in.
They've put a lot of work into him.
They have.
Because he's been at the club since he was a teenager. I mean, a young teenager and through the academy. So I can understand their angst at him leaving, but Peter Bell will think, okay, if someone doesn't want to be, and same with Sean Darcy if he came to them in the
next month or so.
Next month and said, you make the best of what you can. I think keep Darcy if he wants to stay. Absolutely, keep
absolutely.
him.
He's a star.
So I think that's people saying just let him go. I think if he wants to stay, you keep him. But Liam Henry is going, so it's a question now of getting the best possible trade off the back of that. So D for you, D for me. The Dockers unable to play finals, which is in many respects an F, given what we expected last year. West Coast Fremantle, there are rankings. Let's go through the next 16 clubs after this. The Shelter FootyCast Thursday edition. This is the bye week before the finals. Let's just roll through these relatively quickly. It's all done alphabetically, but Adelaide could have been a B, I reckon. But as it turns out, the goalpost means they're a C.
Yep, I'm happy with a C. I think they were flying early. I feel like they have a really good, young, talented list. A lot of excitement. Isaac Rankin's been one of the recruits of the season. Their inability to win on the road hurt them. And then they just sort of
stunk it up, didn't they, away from Adelaide?
And then they just fizzled out towards the back end.
Yeah, I mean, you look back, the Sydney game, they should have won it in terms of the scoreboard, but they trailed by 30 or 40 points at one stage. So, but I think there's a lot of promise there. You think of some of the young players coming through, and Rochelle and Pedler and these guys are starting to make a name for themselves. So I think, given they didn't play finals, but Matty Nix, I think they really like him. So we're both going with a C for the Adelaide Crows. And they're a side that I think we saw them in the last game against West Coast. They could have won that by anything.
They could. Taylor Walker could have kicked 20. He's another one. I think if they can, I don't know how much longer they've got of him being a star forward.
He can't kick 70 again.
He can't kick 70 again, but he can still play good footy. And while they can sort of base a forward line around that with the young guys and even guys like Jake Saligo's a star, Isaac Rankin's a good player, Lockie Murphy's a good player. So they've got lots of young talent around, experienced heads, and so they'll have to make a run at it while they can.
Absolutely. And their backline decimated a little bit back into I think Murray and Duday both injured, and a bit of question mark over where some of their defenders are going to play next year. C for Adelaide. What about the Brisbane Lions? Hard to give them a definitive because they're finishing top two. Obviously, they're certainly a B at this point in the season.
Yeah, I'll give them a B plus at the moment. I think the A rank will depend on finals. I think they're dominant at home. They're the best home team in the comp. They win away with the exception of the MCG. That's their only real thing, but they don't get to play there a lot.
They beat Melbourne last season in the grand final and in the final series.
Yep. That's the only thing I think is just going to be where they can go in finals, because the last few years they've been there or thereabouts, and the knock on them is that they can't win big finals, and so they had the final series in Brisbane and couldn't get it done. So B plus pending finals.
Yep, and the backline, which I thought might have been a bit of an Achilles heel for them, has been really stable. Harris Andrews obviously is the linchpin on that. Yeah, we'll stick with a B for Brisbane, given what's to come for them: 2 home finals and possibly a GF in Melbourne. Carlton. Now, your numbers or your letters would have very, very much during the course of the year.
Absolutely. I had them at an F at the midway point. I thought they were the worst team in the comp, and I was never going to pick them again. And I think since I said that, they went 8 in a row.
Yeah.
So really, a backflip on my part. I think, based on where I thought they were going to be, I think I've got to give them maybe a B or a C plus. I think a B. They've been, they've completely outdone my expectations. They've had really good players play really well, and that's all you need from your team. I think if you got your leaders standing up and playing well, and you can have young players under that play, they've had good recruits. Like Blake Acres has come in and played a really important role for them. He's been able to play good footy. Jacob Wiedering's obviously playing very well down back. Paddy Cripps is playing well, and then you got Big Charlie up front kicking goals. So yeah, I think you'd be hard-pressed to argue anything other than a B at this point, and then see how they go in finals.
Yeah, they get a result for me as B as well because of what they've done in the back half of the year. Harry Mackay, where do you play him? Still a bit of a question mark heading into the finals. Charlie's been enormous up for the Coleman medalist. And the other guess of Jacob Wietering, a little stiff not to make All-Australian, but also maybe pretty happy that he's available given the altercation with Toby Green. So a B for Carlton playing finals again, which takes us to a C team. Collingwood again. They have been the best team through the by and large for the course of the 24 rounds.
Yeah, you can't argue anything other than an A, I don't think, here. They've been flying from the very start. They've been very tough to beat. They lost a tight game against Melbourne earlier, and then they sort of just went. They almost became unstoppable. The team last year, I sort of said to them, I said at the start of the year that I thought they might be the team to drop out based on the fact that they'd won so many close games last year and you can't replicate it. But the belief that McRae's got in this group, and you hear Darcy Moore talk about it all the time, the fact that they can be 40 points down at the third quarter and say, it's okay, we're still going to win the game. And that's been on show so many times this year. They've just run over teams late. They're led very well. They've got exciting young players all over the place. And they just seem to have gelled very well as a group. So you can't argue anything other than A, I don't think.
No, it's question marks. Can they get their best team out for the serious part of the season? Nick Dacos, unlikely to play against Melbourne on Thursday week, or next Thursday. More coming back from injuries. So they've got a couple of injury concerns. Can they replicate what they did during the home and away season in the final? Schoeys got a question mark over once the pressure comes, whether it will be as dynamic, as exciting to watch. But look, evidence shows they're going to be tough to beat.
They'll be hard to beat. I think, so it's interesting because I think Melbourne are going to win the flag and I think Melbourne are going to beat them next week. But I still think they're going to be, it'll be obviously a hard challenge, but then all roads probably for them lead through Brisbane, and how do you go over there? And yeah, I think it'll be a real test. If I'm wrong about Collingwood, and they're going to obviously have to prove it this final series, but they'll be a well-deserved winner if they get there.
All we know, they've only won 2 flags since 1958, Collingwood, and both of those have come in dramatic fashion. Of course, that following 1990 was when they had Essendon, who had this whole final series was turned on its head because of the draw with the West Coast Eagles, and then 2010
the draw again,
replay. So nothing comes simple for Collingwood. Even 2018 shows that when they got beaten by the Eagles. A for them, Essendon, our next club up for discussion. Gee, you had them in the B territory at one point.
Yeah, they were right around there. I think. I think probably a C for them, maybe. I think the way I had them pegged for the worst, almost bottom 4 at the start of the year. I thought they were no good. And then they really got going, and Brad Scott's done amazing things with the group. They had real synergy, and they looked like they had a brand of football as opposed to the last few years where I felt they've just sort of been aimlessly wandering the competition. And then in the back half of the year, they sort of settled down and settled into where I sort of thought they would where I thought they would go. But I feel like just the way they exceeded expectations early, I'd probably have them as a C for the year. I don't think you can complain with the fact that they, have sort of outperformed how most people thought they'd go.
Yeah, they went terribly in the last month, which I guess leaves a sour taste in Bombers fans' mouth. Yeah, I'm thinking sort of C- for them.
Yeah.
Not the worst, but certainly they've got to improve in a couple of aspects. We move to Geelong, the reigning premiers. So rare that, well, not rare, but the fact they've actually missed the finals after winning a flag. Is that just a case of having too many sherbets at the end of last season? Is it the classic premiership hangover?
Could be. They've had some tight games where they've lost against good opposition. They didn't miss the finals by much. It was a tight year, but you've still got a fantastic list. You didn't really move many players on last year. Joel Selwood left, and I don't think you had many more go. So it's I think it is a bit of a case of a premiership hangover. Whether or not that's in reality, or whether they just lost some tight games and couldn't quite get it done, and you'd have to give them. You'd probably be tough to give them anything better than a C.
Yeah, I was thinking C territory. It's they didn't go bottom 4, but
they weren't horrible. But you win the flag and then you miss the 8. That's
a fail.
That's a fail.
Sense.
Yeah, that's a fail. I think you get a C.
We'll get a C. C for the Cats, and we know that they're looking at maybe Bailey Smith coming to the group. They're always looking to reinvigorate with
they do a very good job of that.
They replenish pretty well, so keep it on the Cats. But I reckon there's a bit of work to be done for them, for Chris Scott moving forward. Here's an interesting case. Gold Coast on their season, and it almost seems like we put a D next to their name every year out.
Yeah, well, it's probably the same this year, isn't it? They, I think they've got. I speak about Brisbane having a really good home ground advantage. I think Gold Coast is starting to get to a point where their home ground advantage is giving them a chance to win enough games to then get on the finals run. But it's got to become that they're a side that can play away from home now. And I still think they're struggling to do that a little bit. And they've got good leaders around the place. Obviously now Damien Hardwick's going to obviously do wonders with the club. They've got good players. I just didn't think they started pretty well. There was the talk that maybe this is the year they break in, but I feel like they just fell away a little bit at the end, and their ability to play away from home hurts them. So, I think a D again.
Just trying to stop my daughter ringing me during the middle
Fair
of a
enough.
podcast, and people
Maybe
that I
she
know-
would agree with the fact that Gold Coast weren't very good.
No, she wouldn't even know they exist. The Gold Coast Suns, I'm putting them down for, I think we went with D with them. So,
Yep.
Interesting, Damien Harwick suggesting 80% of the players in the room when he was announced coach will be part of their premiership team.
20% would have to be pretty good they bring in.
Yeah, they're not that good, trust me, Dimmer. You might get a bit of a shock at this point anyway. The Giants. Adam Kingsley has to be in the discussion for Coach of the Year.
Coach of the Year, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, for me, I did say they would play finals at the start of the year, but being realistic, no one thought they would.
You mentioned that a couple of times already. So
I have. It's something that I'm hanging my hat on, and I'm not wearing a hat. I feel like they can probably get a B at this point of the year. They've had... Obviously, they've outdone expectations again. Here's a team that no one thought would play finals, and then have just gone bang and done it the hard way. And it was, they got a bit lucky with Western Bulldogs losing to West Coast, but they were in the fight. They were there till the end, and it came down to the last game of the year, and they needed to beat a red hot Carlton to make it, and they did. So I don't think you can give them anything lower than a B at this point. Finals pending, but Toby Green, All-Australian captain, Sam Taylor, Jack Buckley, a really good dominant backline duo. Canelio was playing really good footy throughout the year, and they've just got good players across the ground that are stepping up. So I think a B for them.
Yep, I'm giving Sam Taylor, he needs to come back, although Buckley did a great job on Curnow, but Sam Taylor, massive if he can get back for that first final against the Saints. I'm giving them an A.
Yeah,
only because I had them down the bottom reaches. You, of course.
I said they were going to make finals.
That's right, exactly, for the 44th time this morning.
44, funnily enough, Jack Buckley's number.
Hawthorn, next team up for discussion, and I think most people had them bottom four. Look, they didn't play finals, but I'll tell you what, if you're buying stocks in a footy club...
There's one you can look at. Yeah, a team that you didn't think were going to do anything, too much young talent that wasn't ready to sort of steer themselves in any real direction. I think the way that they'd been playing the last few years was very much Sam Mitchell saying, hey guys, you've been drafted on talent, go out and show the talent, which they did. But I feel like there's a bit more method to the madness now, and they have had opportunities and they've had games where they've really shown that they're going to be a quality side in a few years. Warple's he's already won a best and fairest there, but he's a good player. John Newcomb's come out and dominated. Mitch Lewis is going to be a really good full forward. Sicily, obviously All-Australian. So they've got a number of talented players that have been able to sort of steer a lot of that the younger guys into a path that's going to be a successful footy club, I think. What would have been an F at the start of the year if I had have picked them, though I think they're probably around about a C. You can see the improvement coming, so...
Yeah, I think C plus around that. Hawthorn, no qualms. Sam Mitchell is the man for the job. Let's move to your club in terms of your premiership pick for this year. Melbourne, job not done, finished fourth. But what I saw against Sydney was just a little bit of steel when they could have easily just thought, well, if we're playing Collingwood, let's just turn up our toes. There's something brewing.
Yeah, I think so. They've certainly not had the home and away season that they would have liked. I think they've still finished fourth. I feel like they've lost a couple of games that they shouldn't have. That GWS game I think of, and they were pretty poor in that. The Freo game they should have won. So I think I'd probably give them a B at this point, but I think they're getting good at the right time of the year. So I feel like they've got the potential. I still think they're going to win the grand final. Oliver's back at the right time. Fritsch is back at the right time. He's a star, and he'll add a lot to that group. Lever and May flying down back. They've got things working for them. So I think I'd give them a B plus at the moment. You finish top four, you can't really get below that. And then I think finals pending.
Just quickly, Melksham gone for the season by the looks of it, ACL. Does Brodie Grundy get a look in between now and grand final day? You think the mix is not right?
Oh, I don't know. He had 36 and kicked 3 or something in the VFL the other
Mind
day.
you, Tom McDonald also got amongst it. So yeah.
It's a tough one. You give yourself an opportunity by playing well at VFL level, but yeah, I'm not sure how that mix works, whether it works not well or not. Max Gawn's pretty adamant that they can do something with that duo in the back end. But I look at the Melksham thing, and Schoeys not here, so I'll speak about him. But when Shep went down, it offered an opportunity for someone to come in and play a really big role in a premiership, and it galvanises the group a little bit, albeit it's disappointing. But I think the same thing will happen with Melksham. Melksham goes down, you open the door for someone. Like James Jordan was sitting on the bench and didn't get subbed into the 2021 grand final, so potentially he gets a look at actually winning a flag as opposed to having a medal here that he didn't play for. So it opens the door for someone to come in and do something special, and I think, like Schoey did, that might be something that can really galvanise that group going forward.
There we go. Melbourne on the path potentially to a flag. North Melbourne down at the bottom end of the table, 17th. Victory over the Gold Coast Suns. Look, they don't get the number one pick, but they get a bit of bit of self-belief heading into 2024. I mean, you can't go if you're giving West Coast an E. We're in D territory.
Well, no, I feel like I want to give them. I don't like giving teams Fs. I think that's a bit stiff. So I'm going to give North Melbourne an E as well. They lost 20 in a row or something stupid like that.
Yep,
They won 2 games early. Great, good on them. And then they just went into the abyss for months and months and months. And
You're talking about West Coast or North Melbourne?
North Melbourne.
Oh,
West Coast were relevant still. North Melbourne were just horrible, and it pains me as an ex-North Melbourne fan, and still love the Shinboners, but it was just like deplorable football to watch. They were hopeless. They were nowhere. They've got some shining lights too, which is why I'm not going to give them an F. Nick Larkey's a star. Luke Davies-Uniacke is a potential Brownlow medalist. Harry Sheasel is a rising star. George Wardlaw is going to be a good player. But then I could have given them a D, but to finish without the number 1 pick when it was there, Nick Larkey obviously goes out and kicks 9, so it gives him a little bit of belief going into next year. But they were shithouse all year. You got to give them an E, I think, because I'm not an F guy.
No, clearly not. Port Adelaide, actually the quite achievers when it comes to this year's final series. Finished top 4, but I don't know anyone that's tipping them to win the flag. But it has to be in B territory if you finish top 4, double chance.
Yep, has to be. Went on a run early and got hot and sort of didn't look back from that momentum. They had a little bit of a shaky period where they lost a couple. They lost to Carlton by 50 points, I think, or something. So
Left a lot of players out of that one, and then they went on a bit of a
They went on a bit of a dip. Costing themselves a home final might have hurt them, but I don't think that'll faze them too much. You can't really go away from B+ territory here. Butters and Rosie and Horn Francis.
Guns.
The Horn Francis deal has been
outstanding.
Outstanding for Port Adelaide. He obviously copped a lot of flack early for going, but has stood up under that pressure and is just going to be a genuine star of the competition. So I really like the look that they've got going there. Jeremy Finlayson was a phenomenal recruit as well. So I think they've done well, and you can't really give them anything other than a B+.
No, and they go up to Brisbane with a free hit, really, in sense of not a lot of expectations. Port Adelaide get Bs all across the board. The Tigers, Richmond, they farewell a coach. They have a changing of the guard. They're looking for a new coach, Andrew McQualter. Has he done enough? And what does Richmond get off the back of... we know they were heading in that southerly direction just by virtue of winning flags, and even though they try to replenish with Taranto and Hopper, etc., it's a feeling of rebuild.
Yeah, it is. It's I mean, you can't. I don't think they've been bad enough to give them a D. They haven't been good enough to give them a B. I think they're going to sit. I mean, this is not really an interesting segment because everyone's getting C's, but I feel like C's probably where they sit. They've retired a couple of great players. They've moved on their coach. They've had some good young talent come in and play really good football, but they're just you feel like they tried to do the Geelong-style rebuild that might not have worked for them as well as it does for the Cats on year to year. So they'll have to go again. No Cochin anymore, no Rewalt. So you've got rid of a couple of big stars. And it's, I mean, where does Dusty go next year? Does he go up with Dimmer? Do you lose that? What do you get for him? It'll be interesting to see what happens with them next year. I still think they're a really good club that can have enough good players to be aggressive in finals, but I think they're just sort of sitting around an average C for the year.
Yep, can't disagree with you there. St Kilda, our third last team for rankings. Ross Lyon comes to the club. I think I had them bottom 4 as well. They had no players at the start of the season. They played the most ugly brand of football I've seen for a long time, at times.
Yep.
But you know what? Ross Lyon has done a super job, and they're playing finals. St Kilda fans are saying tick.
Yeah, St Kilda fans are saying tick. I'm saying tick. I think it's a phenomenal effort from what they had like 11 or 12 of their starting 18 injured at the start of the year, and they went on a pretty hot run and got going early. So I think it's a testament to the way Ross coaches and the belief that he can instill in a group to play good football and good system without necessarily their best players. I think they probably get a B. You've locked yourself in finals. You're playing. You've given yourself a real chance at having a crack at it. You've got good players playing at the right time. They had a patch in the middle of the year where they just sort of dipped, and I thought, oh, here we go. This is where I pegged them, and then they picked it up and kept going. So I feel like they've given themselves a real look at what is going to be a promising finals campaign. But I think they're a B at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you there. He's been outstanding. Ross, the boss at Moorabbin. Sydney, our second last club, I reckon they were in C, maybe D territory. I saw them against Fremantle get absolutely towed. I think the turning point in many parts was there was a game against North Melbourne, the interchange blunder, they get away with the result, and it turned their season in. You think of that result, the one against Adelaide late in the season, they're playing finals.
Yep.
well done to them, and they've got a dangerous side given what they did in 2022. They've got some real weapons.
They do, and I think you look at them, and obviously Geelong didn't make the finals, but the other premiership players from last year, the other premiership team has, and I think you look at that. I look at their season. The game against West Coast obviously bolstered their percentage, but it gave a lot of belief to the group. And then from there, I think they sort of went on. They went on a bit of a run. They obviously had that North Melbourne game and then the Adelaide game, which are two furfies that you give yourself 8 points, but you sort of pat yourself on the back and say we got away with one. But Errol Gordon, guys like that, they've got Ollie Florence, a bloody good player. Nick Blakey's a star. The Lizard. So you've got enough talent there. Not a lot's changed from their list last year to this year in terms of their ability across the ground, and they're just dangerous. And I feel like they've gone undervalued and underappreciated this year because of the fact that they haven't necessarily been as good as they were last year, but they've got just as talented a list. So, albeit they're not in the top four, I still think they can be pretty dangerous, and it'll be interesting to see how they go. But you probably got to give them a B, don't you? They were CD territories, but now you're in the finals. You can't argue with it.
Absolutely. I mean, Sydney Geelong grand finals last year. Sydney get in, Geelong miss out, and where they've come from, the Horses done a great job. Western Bulldogs, the last club to discuss. They were in the finals after beating Geelong, but then they missed out after the Giants got home. Probably. It's a kick in the pants they probably need because they've got a list that deserves to be playing finals footy.
Yeah, I mean, this is one. I think that the result on the weekend, if they had made the finals, I would have given them a B, but they didn't make the finals, so I'm going to skip C and give them a D. I think they've got too good a list to be not playing finals footy. I think Bontempelli's almost the best player in the competition. Tim English is the best ruck in the competition, and he's flying. Aaron Norton's a star. You look across the ground, and you've got genuine firepower everywhere. And for that list to play the way it has played and not make finals is probably an indictment on the talent that they've got on that list. So while they haven't made finals, I'm giving him a D. They weren't far off sort of putting it together, but that's where I just think it's such a miss on expectations and such a miss on the talent and the opportunity that they've got.
Principal Brayshaw with his thoughts, his gradings on all 18 teams. Lots of C's there and a couple of E's.
Plenty of C's, couple of E's.
And very few F's. He doesn't like giving F's as the sand over medal favourite. This is the Shelter FootyCast. Right, we're going to rip through our bottom art roughie of the week, of course. So we need no footy, so we're going to have to, no AFL footy.
No AFL football. There's plenty of
other
sport.
Hammer, you've just found one that I think might just whet the appetite of footy fans in WA.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the AFLW season starts this week with the AFL pre-finals bye. And I am obviously obliged to tip West Coast every week, given I work there, but I work a lot more closely with our AFLW side, given that I'm their midfield coach, and so that's my bottom up roughie of the week. We play Freo this week in the Derby. I'm not even sure what the odds are, but I'm imagining that we're probably a roughie and we're going to win the game. So that'll be me tipping the West Coast Eagles as I do every other week. But this week we'll get it done.
There's $6 on Tab Touch. So
brilliant! Shut up and take my money.
You must be absolutely no good if you get.
That's just not true.
What's going on there?
The bookies obviously don't come and watch, so we they don't pay too much attention. How much is a slab of shelters these days?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I haven't paid for them.
Yeah,
I tend to get them on the sly if I can. As you know, a lot of graft and corruption in the Shelter FootyCast section. I don't see too many cans left unopened there. There's always replenishments in the Schoeys fridge. I'm going to go, given that I know nothing about AFLW this time of year, I'm going to go to the NRL. How about this? Yeah, just it's something that will completely put me out of my lane. I'm going to tip North Queensland Cowboys to knock over Penrith. They're paying $3.40. Penrith, will they finish top? Won't they? I've talked about that. I have no idea whether that'll get up, but Jaden put me down for North Queensland Cowboys, the away team at $3.40.
Wow.
Penrith's very good.
Penrith are very good.
A hat-trick of premiership. So
Yeah,
I know I'm singing into the breeze
Penrith
a
are
bit.
very good.
Yeah.
So I think that's a roughie. Mine's not really a roughie. Mine's signed, sealed and delivered. But the
$6.
Well, the odds for AFLW, no one knows this time of the year. So give us 2 or 3 rounds and things will settle. But we'll be 2 and zip by then. So
yeah, well. You don't want to get wooden spoon in the AFL, the waffle and the women's, do you, again?
Well, that wouldn't happen.
No, of course. Let's jump into our listener questions. Only a couple here. This is from Ninok. Do you think, Hammer, the reason for Geelong's significant drop is due to Joel Selwood's retirement?
Not specifically that. It's obviously played a part in it, the leadership that he brought around the club. I feel like they've just been very, very good for a long time. They've got a lot of senior players that are probably just a bit tired. So that would be my assessment.
Yeah, fair enough. And David the Docker, if Nick Larkey can kick 70 for North with a poor list, why was Freo's best goal number nowhere near that? Game plan and coaches must be a big reason, so I think changes have to be made in the off-season. Essentially, Jai Hamish has been a really strong young forward, but this bloke, David the Docker, our friend, wants more scoring involvement from the Dockers, which has been a bit of an issue for a while.
It has been. They haven't had a key forward that's really dominated since Matthew Pavlich. So I agree. Nick Larkey is a phenomenal player, though. So don't discount him. And I think you could probably ask more of Jai Amos, ask more of the way that the Freo move the ball to get him more looks. But yeah, he's still young though, is the only thing I'd say. Larky's got a couple of years on him, and Amos will build into a really, really good player. So, but I agree. I think their ball movement style needs to change, and some things need to change in the off season to get them to a point where they're playing a bit more exciting football.
Thank you to David the Docker and Ninok. We appreciate your correspondence. This is the Shelter FootyCast. Righto, let's wrap this thing up on a Thursday. Of course, the bye weekend. Anytime you want to get involved, socials at Shelter FootyCast, FootyCast at shelterbrewing.com.au, YouTube BackChat Shelter FootyCast, the playlist, the link's in bio. Don't forget Dice performing at Shelter, September 22, the long weekend. Hey, Hammer, you've got a big weekend with the Royals Elimination Finals Sunday at Leederville Oval. Waffle Finals, both at Leederville Oval. Go well.
Thank you very much. See you next week.
There it is.
Win.